everybody, I'm Elizabeth and I'm here with my friend Emily.
Hello.
She has actually been with me before on this blog, but what I love about our friendship is we really get a lot of opportunities to do life together. So what's really cool is that we often are going through a lot of similar things just because we're sharing life together. And so this morning we had at least for me and hopefully Emily too, we're just kind of inspired by the things that we were sharing that God's doing in our lives. And I just got really excited because I thought, we should do this for my blog. So this is kind of an impromptu video. The theme of our lives right now is that we are changing. We are working on change. We are letting God change us. I've just been so amazed to hear how hard after God that she's going and how hard after her that God is going. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And just the idea of digging deep and going deep in God. So Emily, what would you say, what kind of changes are you making in your life and how is that going for you?
Man, it's going so well. And I think the biggest change, it kind of started probably a month ago when we decided to do something called the Whole30, and it's this very strict regime where you don't eat anything good, basically. And I started it with Elizabeth, and I failed on the 10th day, and she continued, and I didn't really continue. And I remember on the 10th day failing, and I was working at a coffee shop, and how it works is that at the end of the day, we throw out the pastries that are old. And I also get a free drink. And so I had a free drink at the coffee shop, and then I had a pastry, which was before closing. So basically, I took a pastry that would have been thrown away because we had like 5 or 6 left over, but before it was closing, and so it was technically not mine yet to take. And I was sitting there eating it, and I was just overwhelmed by how little character I had. And it was really humbling because growing up, I grew up in a very in a family where there's a lot of discipline and a lot of emphasis on character, and compared to a lot of people I knew, I grew up with character. And so this revelation of the lack of character in my life was so really, it was frightening. I was like, I am so terrible. And it was, it was more than, but it was not just shame, it was also a godly conviction. Like there's more that I was created to be. So there wasn't just a feeling of like hopelessness, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how horrible I am. But there was a dawning that there's more to life than this, and there's more, and that character and righteousness are very similar, especially when character is sought after because of a love for God and a love for His holiness, and it's just like seeking His presence. And so with that in mind, it really started there. And then for me, because I struggled with eating disorders, and that's the area where I lack the most character, it's really come out in some really beautiful ways. It's character development.
Well, I love the two distinctions you had there, the one of the shame versus godly conviction, because I don't know about you, but I've had these moments, oh my goodness, where I've done the same thing, and even with the whole, did the Whole30, even I can't even technically call it the Whole30 because I also broke Whole30, which means you eat something that you're not supposed to eat. But yeah, I did keep going with it. But I've definitely had moments where I've either broken Whole30 in other areas of my life where I was supposed to keep going and I didn't because of the shame. But I love that difference of breaking Whole30 or doing something you're not supposed to do and still going because of the conviction. And there's a big difference. And then you also said, you talked about character and righteousness too, those distinctions, how they're closely related, but then going after God is that building righteous character. And I love character and I love righteousness, and so I'm so happy to see that in both of our lives. I'm really grateful for those distinctions.
Yeah. Elizabeth is such an inspiration when it comes to being a woman of character and doing it in such a way where God is always glorified, and there's a pursuit of Him constantly that makes her character not not hypocritical, not condemning, but so beautiful and inspiring, and such a picture of righteousness. And it's just such an honor to be her friend and to have that example.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. So you are doing another thing right now, another program.
Yes.
That I'm really inspired by. I actually don't know much about, but it's with, is it Caroline or Carolyn?
Caroline.
Dr. Caroline Leaf. I've also mentioned her before in, I think, my first blog video. But she says some amazing, interesting things, and it occurred to me today as you were talking that probably one of the reasons I love her is because what she talks about kind of forces us to take responsibility. You have borrowed my books that she's written. It's been a long time since I've read it. So what's something either from the books or the messages you've heard of hers, or just something that that she's been teaching that you've been using in your everyday life?
Program I'm doing, it's called the 63 Days. And it's 63 days to eat and think yourself smart. And the concept of it is that what you eat is directly related to how you think. And this has been huge for me, especially in building character, because the whole emphasis of the program is what are the underlying mindsets, and also the idea that every emotion is connected to a thought that's already so deeply ingrained into your brain that you don't even recognize it as a thought anymore. It just comes up as an emotion. So that's been really good. Kind of a background on my story. I've been working on overcoming binge eating basically for the last 2 years, and it has felt so hopeless, partly because of the plethora of emotions that I've been dealing with in regards to food. And so one of the main things that two of the main things that she talks about are choice. She really emphasizes you have love, power, and a sound mind. And so the idea that you have a sound mind, you have the ability to choose. And the other is that every emotion or every thought can be taken captive to the glory of God, can be considered and can be rejected or accepted. And that we, with that sound mind, have the authority to choose. And so that has been so huge, because I had hit, because that story, that coffee shop story, was not the last time in the last month that I did something where I was like, wow, where's my character? And even after that kind of revelation of lacking character and so desperately wanting to change, and part of that was because there's all these unidentified emotions that were thoughts and habits that I had no grid for recognizing as things that I could choose to reject. The real breakthrough came the other day, and it was the same thing where I was, confronted with these really amazing looking chocolate brownies, and I had just a week before that had eaten something that I shouldn't have eaten, knowing I shouldn't have eaten it, and had been sick for a week, and so I still felt kind of sick, but I felt good enough that it looked good, and then I also wanted a chai latte, a dirty chai, and so I had this kind of like this emotion that's like this almost like I gotta have it, like it's like this kind of like almost where I'm gonna like explode if I don't follow my heart.
Wow.
And so
That's so true.
it was so interesting. And usually what happens is in the past I will have this emotion. I'll be like, well, all I really want is this one brownie, so I'm gonna eat this one brownie, I'm going to respond to this desire, and I'm gonna be done. But it never happens that way. It invariably is where I eat the brownie, and then 5 brownies and 4 pieces of bread or whatever it is down the road, I'm like, I can't believe I did that. Like, oh my gosh, what just happened? I don't even know how that happened. I'm trying so hard. And there's all these emotions of excuses basically, and this feeling of being a victim. And I tell myself I'm a victim, like, oh, I had no control. It was such a physical response. And so in the coffee shop, I wanted these 2 things, and I took them and I had them. I did pay for them. I had them, and then baby steps to character. But and then I was done eating them, and I was getting that antsy feeling, like, okay, I'm gonna eat more now because I screwed up. I'm such a victim. I can't control it. And then because of what I've been learning with Caroline, I was like, okay, that's an emotion. This feeling of being helpless, and I have love, power, and a sound mind, which means not only that I can choose my next emotion and my next response, but that I chose to eat that brownie. I chose to drink that latte. And it was so huge, because then I was like, well, I'm not a victim. And so it removed this element of being a victim from my choices and from my eating. Yeah.
That's incredible.
It was incredible. And so I've had in the past, I've not gone a day without doing something, eating out of control. And for the last 3 days, I have eaten I've eaten in control after that revelation of choice. So it's been good.
So many thoughts are going in my head. But this is really, not only is it fascinating, but it's hitting home in so many ways. I guess I want to identify two things. 2 is a magic number today. I want to identify 2 things that really stood out to me. The last thing that you just talked about being a victim, and how I would think that the opposite of being a victim is like taking responsibility. And there's something about that victim mentality that I think in some sense it's rooted in a level of truth, in that we're broken over our choices that we did make. But then from our brokenness, are we going to choose to be a victim, or are we going to choose to face our brokenness and take responsibility? And then the other thing that was really interesting to me was desire as an emotion. And so I guess if I was to sort of take a step back, that the desire as an emotion is something that can get us into a sticky situation if we are not careful. And then the victim mentality can keep us in those sticky situations and create this horrible cycle, essentially. I think in our culture, in our society, we talk about desire without actually identifying desire. Like if you flip through Facebook, you see all kinds of memes like, I'm in love with pizza and I'm gonna like marry pizza, and it's funny and it's a joke, but the truth is, or like ice cream, and I'm talking about food just because I feel like that's a thing we see a lot.
Right, totally, totally, yeah.
And it's just sort of like this passe thing that we just think, oh, that's funny, that's cute, that's whatever it is. But really, it's all about desire. And if I really focus on it, I realize not only is it like irresponsible the way we handle our desire in life, but I think we're permitting it, we're celebrating it, and I think we are losing a sense of identity, of who we are, in a sense of self-love, in some sense. There's probably more to it, but that's kind of what I'm seeing immediately off the cuff.
Interesting. In the misdirection of desire, or the loss of it.
Right.
I think the other part about desire is that it's an emotion. But kind of like Caroline Leaf would say, even every emotion is tied to a thought that we can control. And so there's that idea that my desires, I'm like, I don't know why I love pizza, I just love pizza. Or, you hear those kind of things, I'm just in love with this, I'm just in love with that. But really, especially, and this is I think really hopeful in the idea of desire, is that you can retrain your desire as an emotion to be directed towards things that are holy and pleasing to God, or things that are beautiful, or things that are right and good. Yeah. And you can recreate, and it's not a matter of like recreating the emotion, but as an emotion, it can be directed.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You can direct all of our emotions, actually, and we can also direct our desire. It's tricky because I think that desire comes from God. Like, you look all throughout Scripture, and you see how God desires us. And He created us to have a sense of desire, to desire Him, and to desire goodness, things that are good, which is Him, to desire community, we have so many desires that are good. It's not so much even just about redirecting our desire, but actually really focusing on what we actually desire. Because if you think about lust, like physical lust, sexual lust, those kinds of desires, God created us to desire our spouse, for example. But if we're struggling with lust, and we're struggling with desires outside of maybe what they're created for, probably what's really happening is we are being faced with some lie or some sort of half-truth. That this is actually what I desire, when really what you really desire is real intimacy and real connection that you're not going to get from a one-night stand, or from a broken relationship, or whatever it is. Drugs, for example, is a perfect thing that people can easily see. Oh yeah, I don't really maybe desire the drugs, I just desire to not feel this pain, or whatever it is. But there's so many other things that we have desires for that are so easy to write off because they're not readily looked down upon in our culture, or they're not readily seeming to harm us or harm other people. Things like food addictions and sex addictions and pornography and stuff.
Right.
Okay, so you told me an interesting thing about our minds having authority over our bodies, right? Okay, so can you elaborate on that? Or
There's a verse in Romans that says, "My spirit is willing, but my flesh is weak." But it doesn't say that my flesh is warring over my spirit, or that my flesh is going to, or can control my spirit. It doesn't say my flesh can control my actions. It doesn't say that my flesh has any authority or any power or any ability to move on its own. All it says is that my body isn't as strong as my spirit.
Right.
Which is kind of like when you have a husband and wife partnership. The wife and the husband in a partnership aren't abusing each other. There's not a war going on. There shouldn't be. There's a perfect unity. And so I think a lot of people, and myself included, have taken that verse to be like, oh, I just am struggling with this fleshly desire, and all I want to do is eat a brownie and drink a dirty chai, and I just have no control over it. Instead of being like, no, no, body, you are precious, and you're going to a baby. Like it was a small child. And so this idea that my mind is stronger than my body, and so I don't have to. It goes back to the victim thing, where I don't have to sit there being a victim, being like, oh, my body is making me do this, and my body's making me look at porn, my body's, the desires of my body, the hormones are making me do this, my stomach is making me do that, but understanding that you have love, power, and a sound mind, that you can choose, understanding that you are not a victim, that you're always making a choice. There's a famous philosopher actually called Sartre, and he says we're condemned to choose. And so inaction is choice, and negative and a positive action are choices that you're making. And so this idea that we have the authority to choose, and that when you decide to do something that you shouldn't do, you are not being pulled into it. You're not being drugged by your heels into it. You are choosing to collapse that possibility.
Right. And because every time there's a choice, you have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
No matter what's happened, you just have to take responsibility.
Yes.
Which basically looks like acknowledging it. That's all it is. It's just saying, yes, I did this. And in a relational situation, it's not just yes, I did this, but I acknowledge how it affected you, and I acknowledge how it affected our relationship, and I acknowledge that something needs to happen as we move forward.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I love it. And the thing is too is that when you take responsibility, you're no longer condemning the temple of the Holy God. Because it's our bodies. It doesn't say my mind or my soul or my spirit. It says my body. And so every time I blame my body, I'm besmirching the temple of the living God. And so I love that idea of coming alongside it, partnering with it, and taking responsibility.
That's great.
So
yeah. We talked about this a little bit this morning, the idea of community. When we are maybe struggling with a thing and we want to get out of these harmful cycles or change, because we're trying to change, the idea that community is really helpful with that. I've heard this before, I'm sure many people have, that we're only as sick as our secrets. And you can, keeping a secret is isolation. Even though you can be around people, you can be living in amongst them, but when you're hiding something, you are isolating yourself. And so there's something really powerful in just opening up and just communicating. And it is hard to do. It is hard to do sometimes to make a confession when you are like us, when we really care about character, and we realize maybe our character is not quite as good as we thought it was. There's pride involved. I guess it's really, there's the pain of pride, the pain of recognizing that. But community is so important. In fact, not only is that accountability and confession, actual confession, so powerful, but creating relationships with people that are trusted, that can continue to move us along in the right direction, is so important too.
I so agree, and I love your priority on connection and relationship, and and just how you value that so highly. And I don't know about you, but I feel like since our Tuesday night dinners, I felt like, I don't know how much it has to do with how hard we're chasing after a character right now and the things that we're running after, but I also feel like our relationship in a more of a, not just as a relationship, but almost as a real thing, has gotten deeper and more cemented since we started. Not just hanging out, even when we were hanging out to do homework, but doing life. It's like a step beyond.
It is a step beyond. And I think for me, oh my gosh, I was like, I love it so much. It hits me because I realize because of this, because we've been digging at it together and we've been confessing things. There's nothing hidden in that sense. I have this confidence, like this absolute confidence that no matter what I've done, that I can be in your presence, confess to you what's going on. You can know what's going on with me, see all the dirty parts, and still love me. Like, that is insane to me. And for me, a lot of my shame that I personally deal with isn't even as much of like bad behaviors, although that does happen. For me, it's a lot of I struggle with pride, and so I like to be strong, and it's hard to ask for help, and it's hard to have these weak moments, and I've struggled with like anxiety and depression this summer, and to me that's a weakness that causes me to like want to turn on myself and feel like so proud and not do anything with that and to hide. But you have not turned me away, and having people that hear me and know my like darkness and know me in my dark times makes me it gives me hope.
That makes me feel so humble. I mean, for one thing, this is getting very intimate now, but one thing, I mean, honestly, like being your friend is one of the most amazing things that could have ever happened to me, and it's such a pleasure and a delight and an honor, and just like having someone love you enough to be vulnerable with you. And so it's not just
so true.
And so like and that's what you've done over and over again from the beginning, from like the very beginning of the relationship when we were like restricted to walks. 1 hour, okay?
That's
1
true.
hour.
We had 1 hour a week, we would just go for a walk together and just talk.
And at the door we were done. No, I'm joking. But from the beginning, Elizabeth was so willing, and we both had gone through, I had gone through a long time of loneliness, and Elizabeth was going through some harder transitions as far as learning trust. And so even from the beginning, I was so honored by your willingness to open up and to share that you were dealing with opening up. And that just like, I remember going home and being like, I can't believe how amazing she is, how vulnerable she is, and how willing she is to bring me into community, because it meant a lot to me coming from such a long state of loneliness to have a friend who is so willing, to bring me in and to extend that community and extend that relationship.
Wow.
So,
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I have gotten to a point now, after going through, because it's been a hard summer for me. Oh my goodness. So, because you've been making changes in some really awesome, powerful ways. And you were talking about capturing our thoughts, that we are in control of our minds and all that stuff. That hit so close to home, because my struggles this summer have been anxiety. And that is all in my head. Like 100%. And I confess that, because I've never said this out loud, but actually being on this side of it, I don't mean this in a way that is not compassionate, but anxiety, I would say, is a sin. Because it is not trusting God.
Right.
And I have been working through that, but because of that, like the strength of that struggle, it's caused me to get absolutely to the end of my rope and face God face on, like head on, because when you're at the end of your rope, nothing else is there but God, in a sense. But for me, when I was at the end of my rope, God was there, but so were you. And that is incredible to me, because it has caused me to run after vulnerability, actually, more than ever, because it has literally been a lifeline for me. And although it's been hard, and I don't wish that kind of a struggle on anyone, what I do wish for people is to recognize the beauty of vulnerability
Uh-huh.
and running after it, but especially in those times when we're so broken, whether it's like me going through something like anxiety, or someone going through something like an addiction, or just like, an awful time, when we are the ones responsible for our own ugliness. I just so desire for people to run after vulnerability in those moments, than to run to the people that are trustworthy. That's a really strong desire of mine.
Yeah, that's so cool. I really appreciate how you breathe that. How where you go encourages that.
Yeah.
That level of freedom and vulnerability.
Yeah. Actually, now you say that, I just actually listened to a message the other day about how courage breeds courage.
Yeah.
And you can't have courage without vulnerability. So I would venture to say it's the same thing. Vulnerability breeds vulnerability.
Yeah, probably, for sure.
Yeah.
Just like, that's why community is so important, because you can't breed it if you have no one to breed with.
Oh, that's so true. That's a great way of putting
Unless
that.
you're one of those really strange plants that is self-pollinating.
Right. We are not strange plants, people. We are human beings.
Created to live in community.
Oh, that is so good.
Yeah.
Thank you to Emelie for joining me today and having these talks. I'm so excited. I'm friggin' pumped right now. This is some of my favorite stuff to talk about, and you're my favorite people to talk about it with, because we just like to explore these kinds of things. Thank you for being a woman of character, and for being in my life, and for going after hard things, and for being vulnerable, and for just, confessing things on a regular basis, and eating meals with me, and cooking for me. Every time we get together, I say I'm gonna help, but it's so bad. She's so much better at cooking than I am.
I enjoy it.
It's
my love
easy to
language,
defer.
so-
Yeah. But thank you for that. It's a pleasure. All the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your friendship and your vulnerability, and for being such amazing community, and for being somebody who it's so easy to run after God with. I'm really so thankful for you. It's been amazing.
All right.
Okay, I'm excited. This is
Marker.
so cool.